Guten Tag, Kinder. I am George Frideric Handel, the host of The Composer Detective, where we investigate the lives and music of some of the world's great and influential orchestral composers. Today, we are going to talk about me and The Composer Detective. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am a famous German Baroque composer. No, not like you broke your toy, but as in the Baroque Era, or the period of music, art, and literature that is often characterized by an almost frivolous use of frills, trills, and extra notes, so that it sounded grand, fancy, and decorated. The Baroque era was from around 1600 to 1750. So you see, I lived in the 1600s and 1700s, from 1685 to 1759 to be precise. Yeah, I traveled through time to come see you. I am known for a very famous piece you may have heard, especially at Christmas or Easter. Hallelujah, hallelujah, I am Handel, George Frideric Handel. Everyone stand up. Hallelujah, hallelujah, I am Handel, George Frideric Handel. Sing it with me. Hallelujah, hallelujah, I am Handel, George Frideric Handel. Do you like this song? It is one of my most famous. I wrote it as part of an oratorio called Messiah, which consisted of solos and choral pieces, all based on scriptures from the Bible about Jesus the Messiah. King George II really liked it too. He stood up as he listened because he was enjoying himself so much. And you know what everyone else has to do when the king stands up? They have to stand up too. Now, every time this song is played, everyone stands up to listen out of respect to King George, whether he is here or not. So let me tell you about how I got to this point. I was born in Halle, Germany in 1685, a very important year for composers, I must say, for not only was I born, but also Johann Sebastian Bach and Domenico Scarlatti were born in 1685. Both are fine composers in the Baroque era like me. In my childhood, I grew up hearing music all over town, but as my father was a barber surgeon, he cut hair and performed surgery too, he did not want me to study music. So I had to teach myself to play the harpsichord. My mother and aunt smuggled a harpsichord into the attic so I could practice. At least I think that is true, but I cannot remember for sure anymore. When I was 10 years old, my father took me with him on a trip to visit the Duke of Weissenfels, and when I found an organ in his chapel, I began to play. The Duke was so amazed at my playing that he convinced my father to find me a music teacher. At last, I eventually became an expert organist and harpsichordist. I learned to play the violin and oboe and began to compose. My father still wanted me to study law, and I studied law for a short time. But then I made music my career. So I started to visit cities which were important music centers, such as Hamburg, Germany. You've been there, yeah? Where I played violin and harpsichord with the Hamburg Opera Orchestra. Then I spent some time in Italy to learn more about operas. But wait, do you know what an opera is? It is like a play where the story is acted out on a stage with sets and costumes, and the actors sing everything instead of talking. Very entertaining and challenging. After I spent some time in Italy to learn more about operas, I came back to Hanover, Germany to head up the Royal Music Department for the ruler, whose name was Georg Ludwig. But I got invited to go to London, England, to write operas, so I asked for a year's leave. Now, I ended up staying 3 years, and you'll never guess what happened while I was still in London. My boss, Georg Ludwig, became the King of England. So I stayed in England and became a naturalized citizen of England. That is why I speak English so well. Yeah, the English people loved me. Well, as opera was losing its popularity, I began to write oratorios, which are like operas in a way, in that they tell a story in which everything is sung using soloists and choruses, but there are not sets and costumes. They are a little more simple, and I wrote in English instead of Italian, for this is what the English people wanted. My oratorios were usually Bible stories such as Esther, Saul, and Israel in Egypt. Then in 1741, I had the opportunity to write Messiah oratorio. I was so inspired by the text of scriptures that I flew through my composing of it in only 24 days. The first performance was in Dublin, Ireland, as a charity performance, and later it was performed at Covent Garden in London. And the rest is history. For a few more funny stories about me, and to meet other composers like me, you will have to get the course, The Composer Detective. Now, I do not do my interviews live in the course, so if the quality of today's video concerns you, please know it is better in the course. So let me tell you about The Composer Detective. The Composer Detective is a music appreciation course for the whole family. It is an easy-to-use, all-in-one online course designed to help you lead your children in investigating the orchestra instruments, music, and composers so that you feel like an opera star and they fall in love with listening to music, a benefit for a lifetime. The Composer Detective was created to help homeschool moms achieve confidence in leading an orchestra and composers unit. Not you leading the orchestra, but leading the orchestra and composers unit, because music is beneficial in all areas of education and in the enjoyment of life. In The Composer Detective, you will go through 4 important steps of musical knowledge. 1, you will investigate the instruments of the orchestra. Musical instruments are fun and interesting, so kids will get hooked on learning about the instruments and the music they make. 2, you will investigate the history of the orchestra. With an understanding of the 4 basic eras of orchestral music, the characteristic sounds and forms of each era become familiar, and children will grow to enjoy all kinds of music. 3, you will investigate the composers of each era like me, George Frideric Handel. When children get to know the personalities of the composers and learn history, geography, and culture right along with music, the composers will come alive to them. And 4, you will investigate some music of the composers. Listening to the music of the composers, beginning with short pieces, it's okay if your children do not have a long attention span. We begin with short pieces. Then children will become accustomed to the sounds of the instruments and the style of the era and grow to appreciate music from a variety of composers. The Composer Detective is a year-long course consisting of 10 units, 1 on the orchestra and 9 on specific composers. You will want to buy the whole marvelous musical adventure. But if you like, you can also buy some of the units as standalone unit studies, and each unit would take about a month. The Composer Detective is for families and is geared towards elementary and middle school as far as the activities. But high school students could use this for a credit of elective music appreciation as they follow the teacher notes also. It is designed so that even if you don't have a music background, you can lead your children in learning about the orchestra and composers with confidence because you have me, George Frideric Handel, as your guide. And really good teacher notes, a student activity pack, and curated video performances of famous orchestras, conductors, and soloists to connect you with history and culture. As you can see from my interview, we talk about history, geography, right? I talked about being born in Germany, studying in Italy, living in England, and we also talked about culture and many other wunderbar aspects of music. The full course of The Composer Detective is $187, and the units are $27 to $47. But this week, I am having a sale for 25% off any course. Think about it. With the discount, the course is about $140, which is only $14 a month for the 10 months of the course. You cannot buy tickets to the symphony for only $14 each time you go. Do you want to try it? This week only too, you can try out a mini unit free. It is part of the full unit called Investigating the Orchestra, which is a standalone unit that I sell for $47. And this mini unit is $27 on its own, but you can view it for free, and it covers the section on the piece Carnival of the Animals by Camille Saint-Saëns. So your children can learn some of the instruments of the orchestra. You can watch the videos and look at the teacher notes and student activity pack, but you can't print them. You'd have to buy it to print them. Check the link in the comments of the video to get access to your free preview until May 31st, 2021. So, thank you for watching today. Danke. I hope you enjoyed learning about me, George Frideric Handel. Please join me in The Composer Detective to learn more about me and other great composers.